Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode. Hope you're having a great day. We're going to break down the amazing world of artificial intelligence or AI, and as well as the world of robotics and how they closely relate. So, a lot of you may not be familiar with this technology, maybe have never used it yourself. We're going to give you some pointers on how you can implement some things in your life, use it as an assistant, or if you want to do a deep dive. We're going to get into that as well too. Also, some of the ethical and sort of moral implications that come along with this. How do we use it? How do we not abuse it? And why is it important and why should you care? So, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate that. We'll be back in just a moment right here on Quantum Ladder Podcast. Welcome back to Quantum Ladder Podcast. My name is Louis Borges. Joining me on today's show, my good friend and co-host, Mr. Marquise Williams. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. Ready to get this started, man. I'm
I
excited.
know this is your favorite
This-
subject. We're talking artificial intelligence, and
yeah.
we're going to let you start because I love the energy you bring with that. This is literally your favorite thing to talk about. You know more about it than anybody I know. And in fact, I wasn't even really into the AI thing, hadn't really played around with it much until you kind of showed me how it works and some of the things that can be done. And it's just amazing. And I'm excited because you're a wealth of information on this topic. And we're going to break it down because some people don't really know or what they know isn't the full story, both in good and bad. And I'm sure you'll do a good job explaining that all. So you're like a little wind-up toy, man. We got the
I'm
key in your
so
back. You're ready to go.
This has been a topic that I've been like drooling over for so long. But I'm really excited. This whole week has been a big excitement for many reasons. Big reasons.
Yes,
This is
Ken, I have to interrupt you. A big congratulations to you and your family. Marquise just had what, your 17th child, something like that?
about 18th, actually,
The
18th.
first baby
Um,
boy, Negan
yeah,
Williams, beautiful little baby, healthy, mama's good, baby's good. So from my family to yours, brother, congrats. And I'm sure a lot
thank
of
you.
our fans and viewers feel exactly the same.
Thank you. It was a really exciting time, and honestly, I got some great pictures. Maybe we'll share them at some
Sure.
other point you guys can see. But I'm really it's just a great week. It's a great week. So let's get started. So I want to start off by telling you guys we're going to be talking about machine learning as well as artificial intelligence because they go hand in hand, and I'm going to explain everything. So do not worry about whether or not you're gonna miss anything. I'm going to explain it all. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what are we talking what kinds of things are we talking about when we say machine learning? It's going to be technically dense at first, but don't worry, I'm going to make it super easy. So I remember a moment a long time ago. Well, actually, two moments. One not so long ago, one a long time ago. When I first saw Siri on an iPhone, I knew I wanted that because it helped me. Like, oh my gosh, Siri, you can talk to your phone and ask it questions and it can give you answers. And Siri just lit up as I said that. That's artificial intelligence. And that was the beginning for me. But then there was another time when I asked my phone about the weather later on as it evolved. And it responded as if, we were friends, like we were just catching up on something because I can go back and forth with it. This is recently. And that's when it really, I mean, this is why this topic is so important to me and when it hit me really hard. We're living in an age of AI. It is literally the age of artificial intelligence. And there's this idea of what's called the Turing test, right? Alan Turing is the person who came up with this test. It's the idea of that machines can think, and these are things that are going to change every aspect of human life entirely, all of it. And we're going to go over that. So let's start with the basics though. So imagine that you're teaching a child how to recognize animals. You saw those picture cards that you use, and they're like, "Hey, what's this?" A flashcard. You say, "What's this?" And they say, "I don't know." And over time, they learn how to use these cards. So you show them a picture of a cat, and eventually they say cat. And after seeing enough of those pictures, they start to recognize cats on their own. And here's what's interesting: a child will eventually recognize a cat in different colors: a brown cat, a white cat, a spotted cat. They don't differentiate the color of an object or a thing as being something different. They recognize it automatically by themselves. That is how machine learning changes artificial intelligence to make it something that thinks like we do. And so that's the basics of what machine learning and artificial intelligence does. But AI is much broader because you know these machines become not just replications of human intelligence, but extensions of them, where we use them to enhance our intelligence. And Siri's still thinking that I'm talking to her. I'm so sorry. We use these as companions to ourselves, to our abilities, and they enhance the human experience and our I guess even our knowledge base in ways that are more tailored to us individually. So you might say, "Oh, when I go on the internet, I have to ask Google what is this," and I go to a website, and the website tells me this dry, random dry abstract of a scientific paper. But what if you learn a different way? What if you learn by pictures, images, videos? What if you learn by conversation, which is how I learn a lot, by conversation? How would you do that? How would AI change that for us? Well, right now we have things like Bard, which we're going to talk about, ChatGPT, which we're going to talk about a little bit, and deep learning, things like that. These are again conversational AIs. They're LLMs, large language models. They use what's called I'm going to try to get this right, RHLF, um, which is or RLHF, reinforcement learning with human, human intelligence. So you're going to use people, us, the AI uses us to teach it how to.
Right. So the more inputs people are giving it, the smarter it becomes. It's learning not only from its own experience, but from the user experience as well. Is that right?
100%, hundred
Wow.
percent, and the
So, and compared
substance
to things like, algorithms, which we've had in our phones and cameras and computers for
always,
years, this is
always.
different because this has the ability to mature almost and develop stronger, on its own and as a result of us playing with it, right?
This is what's really bizarre because we're going to talk about again. There's a lot of technologies that are using this now. We have to get used to what's called the reinforcement learning, which you just mentioned about this dialogue, this open dialogue between us and the intelligence, because it needs to learn how we think. And why does it need to learn how we think? Because we need to do what they call align with this artificial intelligence. If we don't align with it, then that's where the dangers come into play, and that's
Yeah,
where the
I read something. I think for Germany pops into my mind somehow, but it was this AI platform, and they just kind of like let it loose for people to play with
bad
it.
idea. Yeah.
And
Oh,
within like a day, it was like a racist piece of you know what. It was the
yeah.
most ignorant
Yeah.
thing because people were just feeding it loads of
Yep.
hate speech and all this crap. And they were like, this is what happens without proper,
Yeah.
handrails on this stuff. AI could just learn whatever crap you throw at it too if you don't do it right.
That's the danger, which we're going to get into as well. The danger is there's bad people in the world. There's people with bad intentions, right?
Yeah,
And so, what about releasing this to the world, and then you got bad people who use it for bad purposes?
yeah,
Well, they're trying to align AI with human values, and on top of the algorithms, they need to implement what they call an alignment algorithm, which is where the AI and through machine learning, which is what again we're going to get into the details of that, learns what we value and what generally we value. And they need to do something like what they did with the nuclear agreement, where
right.
every nation comes together and says, "Hey, listen, these are the parameters we're going to set. These are the oversights we're going to implement, so that nobody takes this technology and uses it to like build a virus that wipes out humanity, 50% of humanity by tomorrow afternoon, and there's
Or
no way to
uses
stop
it
it."
to give you instructions on how to build a bomb or something crazy, right? Something that the internet would filter, but
Well,
perhaps this would miss.
yes, only it's much more terrifying than that because the potential dangers are just as equally as um changing, I guess civilization changing as the potential good. You could ask if you were to ask, yeah, how to build a bomb, you got to buy those parts, right? So you could find a way to get those parts, but if you do, the FBI is watching, the CIA is watching.
Sure.
They're going to know you're picking. Oh, somebody is getting these different elements to build a bomb. But what if you find a way to trick that system that is designed to find people who are looking for these materials? That's the danger,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
now you can use AI to trick systems that are meant to protect us from these kinds of things that are much worse than a bomb, but again, like a virus. Or even worse, let's say you protect people from that. But what if AI accidentally,
Yes.
for example, you say, I want you to find the best way to build solar energy. And it's like, okay. And then boom, your output is this is the output. And you implement it. But as a byproduct, it wipes out, all of the resources necessary for us to not not end all life on Earth.
Yeah.
It could be. These are the kinds of things they're thinking about now to prevent AI from destroying all of humanity. Now they don't want to release what's called a general AI, the AGI, artificial general intelligence, on the world. They keep saying this all the time. I hear this a lot. We don't want to drop it on the world right now, but we have to do things like get that human reinforcement learning in now, because people are already doing this all over the world.
Yeah.
Other nations are doing it, and they don't have the ethical guidelines that we might have in the U.S. Some. I
There
mean,
may
you
even
could.
be people in the US that aren't ethical either that want to do harm, right? It's all over the place.
It is all over the place, but I like North Korea is a nation that wouldn't mind wiping us off the map, right? And if Russia wanted to do something, there's a lot of nations that want to do bad things. The U.S. has done bad things too. Every nation has done bad things. What happens when a good nation wants to do something bad to a nation they think is bad?
Yeah.
AI can do that. So to your point, this could be dangerous for everyone, and that's why there are committees that were. There was a congressional hearing on this with Sam Altman and others, after which Elon Musk and some other tech billionaires came together to talk about the dangers of AI, and the purpose was to find ways to regulate AI like really, really well, so that we don't have those kinds of effects or outcomes. And we're going to get into how they do that, and it's usually with the heart of it, or the substance of which is machine learning. Machine learning is literally, it's like a country within the AI universe. So we feed the machine or the AI information, lots of it. Like the child that we talked about earlier that sees these cats, we're showing it cats. After seeing about 10 or 15 of them, maybe they get it, or 100 over days and days and days. Well, machine learning, you feed it data, and through machine learning, that system will learn how to learn, not just how to visualize or how to recognize cats, but how to recognize anything.
Yeah.
That's the power of machine learning. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Imagine you're teaching a robot to make a sandwich, and there are different ways to teach that, right? There's a lot of ways to make a sandwich. Supervised learning, which is one of the ways, and I have some things here we're going to get into as well, is how they do it. Unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning. These are some ways that you can teach it. So what is that? Supervised learning is, it's like if you give a robot a step-by-step instruction, and you provide it with data. Like, this is bread, this is lettuce, this is how you lay it, all that stuff. That's what supervised learning is. We're teaching it what steps to make a sandwich are. But then there's supervised learning, which is how a machine learns on its own, right? You don't tell it how to walk it through. You give it a bunch of ingredients with no instructions, and the machine learns how to do it on its own. It builds its own patterns, like the neurons in your brain.
Yeah. I was just thinking that, like a neural network.
That is exactly correct. And that's where another technology called neural networks comes into play, where the neural network, it powers the machine learning, which emulates this artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is the thing we're seeing. But how does it do that? Through neural networks, deep learning, and machine learning, which is machine learning.
Yeah.
It's all a part of how it learns itself. And then there's reinforcement learning, which is what we're getting into now with ChatGPT and Bard. It's where you train the dog, but it does something very different. Something very different. So you give it all this information, and then eventually it learns how to make that sandwich a pretty good way. But you say, hey, listen, I don't like that. And so it redoes it all over again to make another way, and say, I don't like that. That's not exactly right. And then over and over again, now you're not teaching it. It's learning on its own. You're giving it the reinforcement. Oh, wait, I like that. that is a perfect sandwich.
And it's
You ever
learned after each iteration as well, right?
100%.
Yeah.
That is the
Amazing.
power of machine learning. So there's some advanced concepts as well, some cutting edge ones, and this is where it gets really weird. So just bear with me because I got some notes on this one, and this is where we get
And
into
you
the
got lots
LL.
of images and stuff too to help
Yeah,
break all this down, which we're
we're
going to get
gonna.
into in a few
I'm
minutes
gonna
here.
bring those images up in just a moment because I want to lay the groundwork first. I just so that we have that in your mind, and then the images are gonna bring it all together. So you're gonna know once I say all this stuff and go through these notes, you're gonna know everything you need to know, and then you're gonna when you see the pictures, it's gonna make sense. It's just gonna make sense. So, so this is cool. So then the next one is the cutting edge thing, which is the large language models. Which, if you've ever heard of what's called liquid logic machines, um, not exactly.
I have
Large
not.
language models, LLMs. People have been calling them liquid language logic machines, but they're actually called LLMs, large language models.
So this
They
would
are
be
these
about like a server that would host something like ChatGPT. It's the computer
essentially
that's running it, or is it
Essentially, yes.
software?
It's like a mainframe, a building. Like Google has its own giant buildings,
Yeah.
and they have these networks all over the country, all over the world, that essentially communicate with each other and have information stored on them, data. That is the internet,
Yeah.
and that is what these large language models are. They are, except they're much more monumental because they have all of the information on the internet, all of it,
Right.
all of it. They have access to all of it, and they're using that information to feed to the machines, the artificial intelligence, so that it learns us, all of human knowledge that's ever been created on the internet, all of it.
Wow.
That's what an LLM is. A large language model is essentially like all of human knowledge, and it has access to that. But it's using machine learning, artificial intelligence, all that stuff to learn how about that information, and it figures it out on itself.
Yeah.
So what are some of the real world applications that people are talking about? These real world applications include like what Meta is doing, which we're going to show some images on that. What Google is doing. Meta is, by the way, Facebook. What Google is doing. Your cell phone technology is using this artificial intelligence. Everything is using it. And here's what's important, because we can use it to not just make your phone smarter, to where it learns how to predict the weather better, to where it learns your behavior patterns better, to where it's like learning how you think about things and then adapting when you interact with your phone. Like if I'm texting somebody at 7 o'clock every morning, you got a friend or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and you're like, "Hey, what's up? How you doing? Good morning. I love you." It knows you're going to do that. So when you wake up, it might suggest, "Hey, here's a meme about that expresses your love to your partner." And it knows what kind of memes you like. And it knows how you talk to your partner. And it knows what kind of things you talk about because it's all on your phone and it's all there. And now it understands the context of your relationships and can suggest things that you can say or do that are different every day for your partner or your friend or whatever. Same thing with colleagues. When you're working with a friend, when you're working with a partner, or you're working with if you're a scientific group and you're working together, you can feed that AI information about a project you're working on, and it can learn what you're trying to do, and it can figure out things for you. I mean, imagine working on a project where you're trying to figure out how to, I don't know, improve the speed with which you can detect diseases, and an AI knows that's what your objective is and figures it out in minutes. Like this is what we're trying to do, and boom, it outputs the
And
answer.
hence is the issue, I think, with universities and students potentially cheating or using it to fast track. I mean, I don't think you'll ever be able to eliminate AI because somebody could
No,
just say, give me a bunch of research points and then go do their own research and then put together like, that's not cheating. They're still doing the work. So I
right.
know there are some people that are just saying, I need a 1,000-word essay on ancient
Well,
history in Egypt and
right.
they're submitting that. And if you're, a 70 percentile student and you're submitting something at a 98th percentile, the teacher's going to know that's not your work. And that's how this is. But could you foresee a future where maybe the inputs that the student gave the machine would be submitted along with the work so that you could prove that, hey, I didn't cheat. I asked this thing to give me the 10 most important events that happened in Egyptian history. And I
Mm,
then put my presentation together based on that. So do you think there'd be a way around that? Because you're never getting
100%.
AI out of
So
the student's life. Never.
no, it's so AI is too, and we're gonna get into more of this a little bit later because the implications are the big question. Like, what do we do if people are cheating on tests?
Yeah.
It's what they're writing your thesis, your doctorate, right? That's not fair. However, education is going to have to adapt because now that we know that people can do this, right?
Yes.
They have these LLMs, these large language models that can do these things. Well, they have to adapt. So how do they do that? You essentially you've democratized education to the point where anybody can learn anything they want to in the way that they want to. So how do you work with that? Well, I'm not an educator. I don't know. But educators are working on this now. And the only answer that I have at this moment is one example that I saw was that educators are using, for example, ChatGPT to individualize like education for every single student. So you give them an iPad for every student or a computer. They have access to these large language models like Bard or ChatGPT. And now that you say, okay, I want you all to learn to study the cell, right? And they go and they study the cell, and they're like, I don't know what to do, and they just talk to it like you talk to a friend, and it gives you images, it gives you videos, it creates them, it helps you create things of your own. It has a conversation, maybe it makes a cartoon to display it, and it tailors it all to that person,
Right. And
and
then
then you
moving
can,
forward, that kid's version of that chat GPT is going to adapt to how that kid learns or learns best. And it may
yes,
suggest material more visual,
yeah,
whereas other kids that are less visual learning and want to
yeah.
see it in writing or diagrams, it could become that separate teacher for each kid uniquely.
Remember this part of the conversation. Remember this part, everybody, because what's the potential for this technology is it's world changing. Imagine being able to have a teacher for every single student in the class.
Yeah.
A teacher that is better than a human teacher could ever possibly be, because not only can it do that, the kid cannot understand what you're talking about 1,000 times, and the machine will never get tired.
Yeah. And the
No
kid doesn't have
problem.
to be embarrassed to raise his
No.
hand and be the only
Nope.
kid who didn't get the
No.
lesson, right?
No. Individualized education.
That's
This is the
definitely a
potential.
positive.
Yeah. It is a massive positive. And again, we're talking about democratizing education to the point where you can get a college education without having to pay $80,000 for it, or whatever the price may be,
Yeah.
$100,000 if you want to go to a really high end university. You can get a college education for free because
And then
all of
just
that
go
in
challenge the test.
100%.
Yeah.
You can't take an LLM to an exam to become a
Right.
lawyer,
You
right? The
either
bar
know it or you
exam.
don't.
You either know it or you don't. And
Yeah.
here and again, now people have access to that data, and it's tailored to every single individual person. The education, one thing that they've really put an emphasis on in terms of the greatest potential is on education. It's obviously going to be a massive equalizer when it comes to education. But of course, there are always downfalls. The cheating thing, I think, is the most irrelevant aspect because you can adapt to that. At one point, they said if everybody has the internet, well, guess what? They'll just Google the answers. Well, they do, and people are still learning. They don't. Nobody's like. There's a massive, problem with
Same with a
people
hand
using Google.
calculator. It's
A
cheating because it's
calculator.
doing the multiplication for you. Yeah, but when you're doing calculus, you don't have time to do a long form either, right?
Well,
It's
even more importantly, now you can use a calculator for certain tests in school. But what happens when you say, "Okay, everyone, I want you to talk to, ChatGPT 5, and this is our subject for the today." And then now, they spend an hour with ChatGPT or Bard, and they learn a subject, and that learning process is all in that chat. You can share that chat with the teacher.
right.
The teacher then can use an AI to say, "Okay, let's analyze this data together, give me information about how the student is learning, and help me tailor an educational path for the
Yeah.
student." For the That is the power of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and large language models specifically, which are kind of the
Imagine now,
highlighter.
you'd be able to see the exact point at which the kid got it. As soon as he started
Exactly.
acting or asking questions that were on point, it's like, yes, yes, now you're getting it. So you
Yeah.
could literally go from a confused and frustrated child, or even just a child that knows nothing about that subject.
Yeah.
And then through the course of that chat, you see that progress. And like you
Yeah.
said, that data would be relevant. You could feed that into another server and say, okay, AI, now analyze all this and tell us how to better help this kid. How do we assist him more? How do we become a better educator? Because this is how that person happens to learn.
100%. And this is, in my opinion, I think that we are at that AI revolution, so to speak. We're there. We're there.
Yeah.
And there's AI is going to learn exponentially. So let's get to the first graphic. I wanted to bring this up. So let me just go over the basics of like some of these terminologies. So obviously, artificial intelligence, we know the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computers. There is machine learning, which we just went over. Machine learning, of course, is a subset of AI that provides systems the ability to learn and improve from experiences without being explicitly. So essentially, it's learning on its own. It learns how to learn on its own, and it uses deep learning. And that's the method of machine learning that is based on learning data representations or feature learning instead of task specific algorithms. It's learning from the data on its own. And all of this is used with neural networks. And the second graphic goes by the three types of learning that types of machine learning that we mentioned before. In graphic 2, the supervised learning, which we talked about, unsupervised, and reinforcement. Supervised is where they're teaching it. Unsupervised is where it's learning on its own. And reinforcement is where we're teaching it, okay, what you're learning is good or not good. And that's where these three methods are how AI becomes more useful to us. It's all
And
about
it
becoming useful.
almost looks like the lineage of that too, right? It started off as supervised, and then
Yeah,
it's like, okay, now let's give it a little bit of itself on its own
learn
now.
its own,
And step
right?
3 is now the reinforcement learning, where it can do that and take what
And
it's
we
already learned and run with it.
so here's the most important thing about that reinforcement learning, the last step. If you give a computer information and you say, okay, this is how you see this thing, then you say, okay, now you go and figure more stuff out on your own. Okay, now it's going to learn whatever it wants to. That's where the danger comes into play,
Yeah.
right? Because if it's unsupervised and it's learning on its own, let's say that it's like, what's the best way to do something, and it does the best way to do that thing according to according to the data. However, that thing is going to destroy all human life as we know it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good. So that's where reinforcement learning comes into play, and we say, hey, we don't like that, and it says, oh, okay. Enough times it learns, well, I realize that these humans don't like when we destroy them. So now, now when we have an output, when we learn something, and we give them an output, obviously they don't want us to destroy them. So the output will be tailored to not destroy us.
Yeah.
And even more importantly is, what do we like? Not what don't we like? What do we like? Oh, not only do they not like destroying them, they like it when we help them improve the quality of their life and experience. Now I know what to do. Oh, they don't like it when we use up all the resources on the planet. They do like it when we find energy efficient and resource ways to not louse up all the resources. Okay, they like that. So now they know what we don't like. They know what we do like, and now it's got a complete learning model to essentially learn how to align. This is where the alignment thing comes into play. How do we teach it how to do what we want it to do? That's helpful and does not hurt us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I'm
that's
going to
what
get into that in the second half too, in terms of robotics and autonomy, right? When you give these things on the battlefield, it's life and death decision making, right? How far do you go with that? And what kind of a backbone and framework do you need to have to keep that from getting real
yeah.
bad real fast?
Yeah, and this is all going to tie together. This is why I think this is a perfect synergy of topics. So
Yeah.
the next image is complex. I really don't want to go over all of them. I just want you to see the types of things that are technologies that are used. It's not as simple as the three types of machine learning.
Sure.
It's not as simple as AI. There is a massive complexity of problems, different problems that they have to figure out in order for AI to work at all. And
Yeah,
that's
so
essentially
these little algorithms are like the patches to kind of fill in the gaps so that it has a good understanding of how we
a
think, of what
complete,
is,
yeah, a
preferred,
complete,
what is not
yeah,
preferred. It's a common sense to teach the machine to not be a computer, basically.
yeah. And again, if you think that it's just like, oh, we're gonna get this AI to go, it's gonna destroy us all by tomorrow, because that's not. That's why there are so many different, you know, algorithmic
Yeah.
technologies, or I should say algorithms, types of algorithms, and ways to use algorithms to make sure that these things don't happen, and
Right.
that the things that we want to happen do happen. So there's a massive complexity to this technology. So the next image is just essentially the types of ways that these three machine learnings, or types of machine learnings, are used: image recognition, speech recognition, um, machine learning and education, which we talked about extensively. Let me go over a little bit about the image recognition. So Google's been doing this for a long time, right? You go to you use Google's image AI recognition. You can take a picture of a flower and it knows what freaking
Yeah,
flower it is.
Google Lens, it's called.
Google Lens.
Yeah,
And Bixby has it for Samsung phones. Apple's using some technology for that. There's a whole, we'll get into that too. How they're using this technology to push forth a new technology, an emerging. We're going to talk about that new technology, but also for fighting spam. So, and speech recognition is like if you're in a country where you don't know the language, it can translate that language into your language in
right.
real time without lag today. And we're gonna talk about some of the cool
It's
technologies they're
amazing.
using for that. There's obviously online fraud protection, fighting web spam, phishing, online customer support. So now when you talk to a chatbot online, it's using these LLMs, but they're tailored for companies,
Right.
which Meta's doing this as well for people, but they're tailoring it for companies. Okay, so you're let's say you're Verizon. Well, you don't have the same marketing material and systems that T-Mobile has. So you need to be able to talk to your customer tailored to what your systems do, but in a way that they can relate in a person with a personal touch. They can do it even better than what humans can. You ask a human something, they're like, "Oh, I got to ask my manager." Well, all that information's already figured out. You don't even need a manager when they implement these LLMs, and then they feed it data that's tailored for the companies. So when you're chatting with a chatbot, it's going to be not only more real than when you're talking to a person, it's going to be better and more accurate and more helpful. That's what the online customer support. It's a big deal. And then social media services, virtual personal assistants are my favorites.
That's
And
like
I'm going
Alexa and things like that, right?
It's so much more than that. But yes, it's Alexa, it's Google Assistant, it's Apple Siri, it's all of it.
Okay.
But it's even more evolved today. And we're going to talk about that. So the next one is some of the advantages and disadvantages. We'll talk about those quickly. So the advantages are easily identify trends and patterns, which of course, if you're a business, this is important for you. No human intervention needed, which we just talked about when it comes to customer support. But if you apply that to anything, that's that benefit. The benefit is you don't need someone to help you do anything. Book a trip, get customer support for anything at all. You don't need that. You can use these LLMs to do that. Continuous improvement. So let's say you're working on anything, anything, you name it. I want to, I don't know. I want a perfect wedding speech. You can work on that together, but but you can't just say, "Give me a perfect wedding speech." It'll give you a generic one.
Yeah.
You have to say, "Hey, listen, this is my life. This is what we've been through. These are our memories. Here are some pictures. How can I write the best wedding speech?" Boom.
Or like we got engaged on Mount Everest, so include that somehow in the speech, and it will tailor
Yeah, yeah,
make it based on that
100%.
data.
100%. And you can tailor a speech where you're working together to create it. It
Yeah.
can't do everything for you, but it can help you do everything better. That's the this is some really awesome stuff. And then of course handling multidimensional and multivariate variety of data. This is a complex thinking idea here, but think about it from a science and innovation perspective. This is one of the things that Sam Altman talks about, the creator of OpenAI, one of the co-founders of OpenAI. He says when you talk about AGI, artificial general intelligence, they're like us. First of all, the exponential increase in intelligence from there, we're talking godlike, small g. But when we get to that point, we're talking about saying, hey, how do we solve climate change? And it uses that multidimensional, uh, multi-variety data, which is there's so much. What are the resources we need to do this? How do we do it? How many people do we need? What's the resource management? How do we have the least impact on the environment? And
Yeah.
how do we do it
What
quickly?
are the ethical implications? All those questions.
How do we fix global warming? How do we fix, global like weather catastrophes from affecting people's lives? How do we build houses to where they no longer are affected by floods
Yeah.
or hurricanes or tsunamis? How do we do this? And how do we do it fast? How do we do it cheap? How do we do it efficiently? And how do we do it for everyone? How do we solve economic global crisis? How do we solve? Listen, how do we solve food shortages, droughts? And you ask it, and you'd say, "Oh, it's too complex of a problem." Not for AI. That's the potential of this stuff.
Amazing.
It's amazing, right? And they're doing this now with alternative energies. Google is working now with these alternative energy companies that are trying to use AI to figure out these problems when it comes to like resource management and of course global warming and stuff like that. They're using these models to try to feed it information, multi variety data, multi-dimensional data, so that it can figure these problems out, because we can't do it without a massive 1,000-person team across the world working on it from. But if you give it to AI, one of them, you can ask it one AI, one of any of these questions, and it can figure it out as if it's 1,000, 10,000, million-person team. And by the way, it can do it and simulate what it would look like in 5 years, 10 years, 100 years, what might change in 1,000 years. And it could predict that accurately, more accurately than anybody could ever predict. And it could do it overnight. Now,
Crazy.
this is the potential. And then there, of course, there are some downfalls. The downfalls are data acquisition. It needs information. It needs data. How do it it needs not just data about analytics about these weather patterns and about analytics about the changing. Oh, what's the last 100 years of weather? What's 100? What is our resource management going on? What are facilities using here? It's also, when it comes to like the social applications and the consumer applications, it's your data, right?
Yeah.
What are you texting? What are you typing? What are you saying on
Yeah.
Facebook? What are you
So
saying on Twitter?
autonomy is the issue there,
Everything.
right?
Well, privacy, autonomy, security. You are essentially, and just so you understand, there is no privacy. If you ever heard of Edward Snowden, you don't have privacy already.
That's right.
The question isn't, oh, is this? And I really want people to think about this and not be scared. If you want this technology to help you, well, this is the kind of stuff that there are sacrifices that have to be made. However, if you don't, well, they're just going to use it anyway.
Right.
And it's not going to be for your benefit. So it's not about you resisting it is probably the most, dangerous thing you could do, because it's already being used. Your information is your camera, your pictures, your text messages. They're already being monitored. Only they're not being used to help you. They're being used to help companies and advertisers and businesses, but not you. And so the important thing is that there will be sacrifices that society is going to have to make, no matter what. It's going to happen. It's already happening. You can resist it all you want to on social media, where you're like, I don't want AI to do this. It's already doing it. You either embrace it or resist it if you want to, but you're only going to cause yourself stress because it's already been doing it. But time and resources, it takes a lot of resources, specifically water, to cool the mainframes and the computer systems. It uses a ton of water to do this. So there is an environmental impact that this technology has, but so does everything else. And if you can, again, if you get to the point where it's like, okay, now we can ask it, how do we run you without these issues and reduce the environmental impact? That's where we need to get to, where we can not only stop the environmental impact that it's making, but reverse it and improve our material conditions on this planet. If we don't do it, then we're all going to suffer anyway. So ultimately, it's a sacrifice that has to be made as well. And of course, interpretation of results and high error susceptibility. So that's where the other dangers come into play. Basically, you can ask it a question and it can give you what's called hallucinations, make up stuff.
Yeah, it'll
Things that
give you an
doesn't-
answer, but it may not always be the
It's
most,
not
all data including. It'll just give you something. So it's not perfect. That's for sure. It
no
needs to be fact checked.
100%. And the funny thing about this is, we already use Google, we already use our phones. You ever have a typo?
Yeah.
Right? It's already mistakes happen already. We make mistakes. Nothing is perfect. It's just like anything else. You weigh the pros and cons. Ultimately, there are things that they're considering when it comes to the downfalls, but the benefits far outweigh, especially when it comes to the inevitability of what's coming anyway. They far outweigh the downfalls,
Sure.
the pitfalls of this technology. So that's essentially, so the companies that are using this in the next image are all the big players. In the image, in the following image, we have Google, Apple, Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter now, X, IBM, by Salesforce, which is they're massive, Intel, Qubit. These are just a few of the companies. Microsoft, they're all using these technologies. Apple is using it with their new their Apple Vision Pro, which is phenomenal. X is using it for, they're already analyzing users' data now, but they're using it for advertising. How do we, implement better advertising? Intel's using it for improving their processing, their CPUs and their technology, their computer technology. Of course, Google, IBM, you could just whatever needs to be improved through technology, they're using it. And so we're essentially along for the ride here, ladies and gentlemen. And this is in the next image, it talks about the kinds of potentials. And I don't want to get too into this, but these are the potentials that they are considering, these companies are considering, okay, when it comes to how they're using it in the data and analytics perspective. So probability and statistics, obviously, you can predict the future of certain trends and certain things. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Distributed computing, which is essentially how do we get this stuff out there to the broader public, and then of course all the other things we talked about earlier. These companies are using these technologies, these LLMs, these artificial intelligence, machine learning, for all of these different systems and models. Now let's talk about how that's going to benefit us. Let's talk about. I'm going to get into the future of this, but first, before I do that, what do you think so far? Let's hit me up and tell me what you think so far about all this stuff. This is we got through the data, the intense technical stuff. I want to know what you think.
What I think about all this?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm just following along, man. It's a lot. Obviously, it's a lot. I don't know as much about AI. Like, I haven't researched it extensively as you have. It makes sense, though, that you're trying to give something that is not alive or is not, living and thinking. You're trying to teach it to be a brain. And
yeah,
there's a lot of similarities to how the human brain functions. And maybe that's because we're looking at this with a human lens, because we can't help it. We're human beings. We're going to
yeah,
always
man.
look at it with a
Yeah,
human lens.
yeah.
So it's definitely interesting for sure.
Yeah, this is and so my favorite aspect of AI, of artificial intelligence and machine learning, of course, how is it going to change how we use technology on a day-to-day, like our day-to-day lives, right? What Okay, cool. They're using it to, you know, do all this big stuff. But how is it going to affect me day to day? That's what I want to know. Let's pull up the next image here and let's talk about Meta, Facebook. Facebook has a new technology that they're using to create these AI avatars. Okay. And they've done this in just a year. So they got this tech that turns text into 3D videos, which is a new thing. They have it that so you can type up a text and say, create a sunset. We all know this. It's called generative AI, and it creates images. Dolly does this, but Facebook is using it for something that they call the metaverse. And by the way, everyone is going to be talking about the metaverse in a couple of years. They've created essentially an AI buddy, a partner, a friend that you can take with you essentially throughout all of the applications that Meta uses. In image 9, here's what they're calling Meta AI, the conversational AI that we talked about. They're using it for that. Talk to it. But in the next image, image 10, these are the different personas you can use to talk to it for the different purposes. One of them is what's called a hype woman. They did a presentation on this a couple days ago. So if you want to get like a person, like a life coach, you got that. You want somebody that's going to be a devoted dog mom, right? You're a mom. You want to talk to somebody else about dogs. They got a personality for that. You want to talk to somebody that's a chef. They have a personality for that. A creative writing partner. They got a personality for that. Travel expert, MMA expert, a singer or a songwriter, a
So
video
is it just
game.
like different settings? Like you're getting a different default setting when you sort of chat with that other personality? Like if you
Yeah.
chat with who is it? Lily, the creative writing partner, would Max not give you similar inputs, or Max is going to say, "Hey, you should chat with Lily, our other computer avatar"?
Most likely, he's going to say he's going to do that. Hey, they didn't give specifics, but almost certainly that's what's going to
Yeah.
happen.
I think
Hey,
this
check
is an
out Lily.
attempt at
Yeah,
personalizing it, right? Giving you a
100%,
visual. This isn't a real
100%.
person, but you feel more, I don't know, you feel
Well,
more connected. Even me, like I've played around with stuff like that a few times. I find myself saying thank you and please.
yeah, I
It's
do that too.
very
I do
human-like, you know?
that. This is so so here's what's cool about this. They don't just give you these different personalities. They give you their voices. And they are all famous people, by the way. These are real people. These are not like These aren't like random images. They're real people. They give an image. They give a presentation of Snoop Dogg playing Dungeons and Dragons with you, and it's Snoop Dogg. Like, his vernacular, how he talks to people, it's Snoop Dogg. You're like, hey Snoop, rap something for me, and he'll rap something, and he'll sound like Snoop Dogg
That's
from back in
crazy.
the day. Snoop,
That's
see,
kinda like
double
deep
G.
fakes too, where you can
Yeah,
make a fake video with the image and audio that looks perfect, and that
yeah.
person didn't make that video. It is all synthetic and artificially generated.
Yes, but here's the thing. The writer's strike, right? Why did they do that? The writer's strike was because people were using these writers' creative genius and they're stealing it essentially. And that's not right.
No.
So now the writer's strike is over essentially, and they came up with an agreement that they have to say when they're using like that a writer can use AI to improve the quality of their writing and the of course the output, how much they write. They don't have to, but that and they cannot be paid differently. So, for example, if there's two writers, one of them uses AI, one of them doesn't. One writer is pumping out 50 scripts a day, and they're
Sure.
like freaking blockbuster hits, all right, in a day. One of them is writing one in like 6 months.
Yeah.
They can't pay you differently. They cannot pay. They have to pay you the same. I
So
don't know how they're gonna.
would industry just not evolve that you wouldn't have a job? Like, you know how corporations are, they're gonna
Well,
want output. So if you
yeah,
can bang
that's
out 50 a day, you're always gonna win in the job race compared to a guy who takes, like, what a normal human would, months and months to do a good job. How is that fair competition?
so that is the only thing that I could think of reasonably. That hasn't been talked about. How I haven't. There's no data that I know of. Cause the first thing that I thought was, how are they going to You're telling me that a guy who pumps out 50 a day is going to get paid like the same as somebody who pumps out 1 in 6? How are they going to do that? Well, let's put it this way: if you're a guy or girl who puts out one script a day, or I'm sorry, 50 a day, and you get paid $1 million in royalties for your movies, for the movies that come out, and you're somebody who puts out 1 in 6 months, but you get paid the same for making the content,
Right,
but when it comes to royalties, you're not going to get paid the same. You can't, because the market is calling for 50, not one.
right.
And so even though I think the only way that I can conceive of how that would be implemented, how it would really look in real life, is that like if you're making 100 products a day, or 100 whatever many products a day, a number of them a day, X number, then you're obviously going to get that X number of return, right? So you're
Yeah.
not going to be able to compete with somebody who's an AI writer, who's a writer. But in terms of being employed, you will, just not when it comes to that return,
Yeah. Yeah,
that
the
those
more
royalties.
projects you got your name on, the more royalties you're gonna make. It's that simple.
Yeah. But so that we there's a lot. Everybody always asks, "Oh, what's the downfall?" There are downfalls, but again, you got to ask yourself what it's already happening. So we have to not only embrace it, but we got to start seeing the vision here, because the vision is happening already. People resisted the cell phone at first, but everyone has one. You're not going to be able to resist
Internet
this.
was the same thing.
Yeah,
People are like, "I'll
internet,
never get a computer," that type of thing. I had
and now
family
everybody
that was
has.
like that.
Yeah, now everybody has one.
Yeah.
But how are they gonna? What is this gonna look like in terms of, like, what are we gonna use? Is it we're gonna have our phones? We're always gonna be looking down on our phones to, okay, text it, talk to this assistant. No. Can you pull up image 11, please? This is Meta's new piece of technology called the Meta Quest 3. So what makes this piece of technology so different? And I'm sorry that I'm almost done here, guys. What makes it so different is the Meta Quest 3 isn't a virtual reality headset like the Meta Quest 2 or the Quest 1 or like anything else. It is a mixed reality headset. And if you go to image 12, when you wear these things, this is what it does. So on image 12, the next image, you can see that there's that kind of a fractal design you see is on a real wall. And it's mapping out the environment. Okay, those fractals when you put that headset on, it maps out your environment. It understands the depth. It understands what objects are in your house, everything, so that when you're using the headset, you don't go to another world. You bring that world into yours,
Yeah.
and you
Well, it's
mix.
probably so you don't bump into your own couch when you're screwing around with the headset on too, right?
Well, they used to have boundaries where you're standing still, you put that headset on, you're sitting still, and everything's blocked out, and all you can see is if you want to do like what's called pass through, you can see a grayscale of the environment. But
Yeah,
if you move your head to the right or left, um, it would show that there's a barrier, like an
right.
invisible barrier. Like, hey, you can't go here. Or you'd have to have like 4 cameras in your house, and the cameras would be placed in the corners of the wall at the at the top corners. And now you just use a headset, it maps it out, and it knows where everything is. It senses your environment. So now it knows, it sees what you see, and it can place objects in your environment, right? So like if you wanted a calendar on the window that when you look at it, it not only pops up, but your virtual assistant, if you go to image 13, you know, say one of these people that you chose, the cooking expert. Okay, today you told Meta AI, I'm going to be cooking for a family, or I'm going to do a cookout for my family. There's 12 of them. Um, Remind me that I need to get this ingredient on Tuesday. Remind me that I got to do this on Wednesday. Blah, blah, so on and so forth. Every day you get up, you put that headset on, you look at the window, you're sitting there, and it just, that AI assistant pops up and says, "Hey, don't forget, today we're going to be going to get some ingredients for this," and it shows the ingredients, tells you what store it's at, tells you how much you're going to be spending. All that stuff will be shown in your environment, not on a screen, not on your phone, right above you. And so,
So
in
it's
in,
kind of
in
like the grocery list that's on the fridge. It's dynamic and changes every day based on what you need. Don't forget you got a meeting at 3 p.m. today with Mr. Richards. Like it
right,
would do that like automatically for you.
automatically, automatic,
Wow.
because it's learning you, and
Right.
you're talking to it like you talk to an assistant or a friend, or
Yeah.
all of them,
We need
assistant
more
and a friend,
paper towels. Put it on the grocery list. Alexa can
right?
already do that and create
Already,
an Amazon
right?
list for you, but this is the next level where it would actually put it in the reality you're seeing, just
Uh huh.
like it's a physical paper list on the fridge.
Even more interesting, like amazing, is Apple's Vision Pro. You can put images in your so with this Meta AI, you can put them on the wall. Like you can put a photo album. You're buying these little picture frames.
Yeah.
Why do that anymore? Now you can place a picture frame on your wall. When you come into your house, it's there.
Yeah.
It's just you see all the pictures you want. You can add new ones. You can say, "Hey, I want a picture of the dog in the kitchen. I want different pictures of the dog on the kitchen. I want pictures of my kids on the refrigerator. I want pictures of the family all along the walls, up the stairs, and it will remember where they're placed. It will remember that. If you go to image 14, this is going to be crazy. These little avatars, they're called avatars. They're not people. They are Meta AI, and they will be going with you in all of these different experiences, talking to you throughout the experiences together in your everyday life. That the vision is amazing. But here's the thing: you're thinking, how am I going to wear that big bulky freaking headset? All like I'm not going to wear that thing if I go outside. I'm not going to wear that thing even in the house. Maybe I'll wear it if it for like an hour. It has a 2 hour battery life. Maybe I'll wear it sitting down when I'm watching a movie. A 200-inch screen, by the way, they can make that with the headset. So you'll sit down and watch a movie with the 200-inch screen. Bye TVs, by the way, they're gone. They're going to be a thing of the past. I want a 200-inch screen, 4K, 3D, and I want to watch Avatar. I want to sit courtside at the Lakers game.
Yeah, yeah, that would be pretty
That
cool.
is what they showed that. You're
Sporting
sitting,
event.
you can look down and you're courtside. You sit next to LeBron James. You're like, he's right there. The team is there.
Hey, Jay-Z, hold my coffee. I gotta go to the can.
That is the potential. Right? So, but you don't want to do that, but you can't take that outside. So what's a more practical application? Image 15. These are called Meta. They're called Ray Bans, and it's their next generation of essentially AR glasses. Right now, the technology is not as advanced to where you can bring that mixed reality functionality to the real world, but you can bring other information like weather data, text messages, Facebook, all the stuff that's just like brief information, so that you're not stuck in a like you don't have all this information that's all over your environment when you're walking down the street, right? You have information that you need, like text, like recipes, like you have already set that stuff up. Now it's carried over into the Ray Bans. So when you go walk, hey, let's say you're driving and you want directions. You can see arrows pointing to where you need to
Yeah,
go. Google
turn
has
by
this stuff.
turn. Or if you got a message or something, I suppose it could be like your Apple Watch. You could have it as invasive or as dialed down as you like
Yeah,
it, right? You could have it
yeah.
notifying you always on, or you can have it just kind of in the background, but it gives you that option. So
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily mean you'd be bombarded with imagery and all this stuff unless you wanted it that way. It could literally just be a normal set of sunglasses
right.
that morph and give you additional information as you need it.
Yeah, and that's about that information. If you go to the next one, the image 16, here's the kind of things that you can do. So you're wearing those glasses, the glasses, not the big headset, the glasses, okay? You see those text messages coming up?
Yeah.
It's between you and a friend.
Yeah.
Or you and Meta. You can be talking to Meta, AI, whatever assistant. You're cooking, it can tell you what ingredients you need, how long to put that, how long should you be cooking that on the grill, how long should you be cooking that steak. And in the second image, the picture there, right there on the side, the tennis player, let's say that it could read your environment and say, right there, it's jokingly saying, hey, I don't know what the term was, but essentially she hit the ball and it went outside of bounds, and the glasses knew it and said, hey, that was out of bounds. But you couldn't tell, but the glasses could. They use your imagination. The potential is amazing. I'm a little over time here, so you let me know because there's
No,
so much.
you're doing good, bro. I know we can't totally break the entire subject down because it's so
No, no,
vast.
no, no,
We're just trying to
no,
give people an understanding of what it is, where it's come from and where it's going and why it's important, because you're going to start seeing more and more of this integrated into your personal electronics, consumer devices. The way you interact with your computers and phones may not be staring at a screen in the very near
no.
future,
Very, as in like 2024.
Right.
We're you could not like the whole. So that's about adoption. Like we're not all going to be using glasses by next year. Not going to happen.
Sure. And
Y-
culturally, I think,
yeah,
as well as sort of age groups, certain age groups may not embrace this. They
yeah,
might think
yeah.
it's kind of that loss of true reality. Like, why do you
Right,
need that stuff?
right.
I've got a Portuguese father who's old school. He's going to like, he doesn't even use a computer. So if I showed him that, he'd be like, what do you need that stuff for? Real life is better. Right. But if you look at it in terms of what it can do in terms of assisting you, and if you live a busy lifestyle and you're already dealing with multiple devices, that I could see it really helping to streamline. So instead of having, emblematically 15 remote controls in your living room, you don't have any remote controls. It's all
None.
in one.
Speaking of remote controls, do you know how we talked about Neuralink last week?
Yep.
Well, it's unnecessary because what for most people, obviously, if you're paraplegic or something like that, it's probably more useful. But for everyday people, we don't want to put those things in our head. You don't have to, because you can use gestures as small as this.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
my
So I
bad.
apologize. So you see how I just move my fingers like this?
Yeah.
You can just do this and scroll through your Facebook. You can do that, and you've already clicked on an image.
Yeah.
And Bard is doing this. Google Bard is doing this AI revolution too. Because so Google is doing this big. They're doing big things with this. Can you go to image number 21? I know it's jumping ahead. The so we have the phone, the watch, and the earbuds. Okay. Why is that important? Because Google, like Meta AI, Google is doing this as well. And when you have the AI or the glasses and stuff like they're using, all of these things are integrating together, and they're doing it with Google's doing it with Image 17, which is what they call Bard. It's their AI model. In the Image 18, they're using all these different languages. But here's the thing: programming languages. Like, what do you use to create these like these codes, right? It's all these different languages: C, C++, C Sharp, Dart, Go, Groovy, HTML, which is like your website stuff, Java, JavaScript, all these different technologies at the top, or programming language at the top, in the bottom. They are used to create the applications that we use every day. And by the way, AI can do it for you. You can create
Wow.
an application with knowing no programming, using any of those programming languages, just by talking to it. So
So learning
now,
curve erased. Anybody can become a coder because you don't need to do the hard
done.
work.
Think about this. All the things that we just talked about, especially the consumer aspect of it with the AR glasses and mixed reality and all that stuff. How long do you think that stuff is really hard? But with AI, you work with it, you iterate with it, and now you can create a one-person team, two-person can create the same type of innovation as 100-person team, 1,000-person team, because they're using iterative AI, iterative learning with AI, and they're getting these outputs that again we could get them just by I don't know how to do programming. What if I wanted to create a application that stored all of my pictures and showed them to me every third picture for 4 seconds, and it flashed it for 5 seconds, but it also edited them so they look whatever. I could tell the large language model Bard in this case do that, and it would create the code and say, okay, now I want to put it on the App Store, and it would show me how to do that, and click on the link, and then you just boom, upload my code. Now you have an application democratizing innovation.
That's amazing. That's
I hope
amazing.
you're
Yeah,
ready.
it's the great equalizer, right?
I hope you're ready. And the very last thing that I want to show you for the images is image 20.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
image
So
20 is
image
the
20.
baby.
We'll save that other one for the other. So image 20 is, you see this. I apologize. This image I got from Google's presentation, so I apologize for the advertisement here for their phone. But you see that little cute little baby, the little Gerber baby right there. You see those little voice lines. That's obviously voice lines, right? So the baby's cooing, but in the background there's all kinds of noise. And if you see that noise, the circle at the bottom that says noise.
Yeah.
At the very bottom, you can control how much noise reduction you want using AI to reduce the background noise. And because it understands what you want, it cancels out whatever noise you want except for what's in focus. And that's a cute little baby. So now maybe there's kids playing in the background. Maybe there's somebody playing watching a movie. Maybe there's the lawnmower going on. It will, using AI, cancel all that out with nothing. It just cancels it out just with AI and focus on the baby cooing. This is the power of AI. So here we go, guys. That's how it's going to change our everyday life. This is just scratching the surface of what it can do. I wanted to get it, try to get the dense stuff first, get into the potentials next. And in the Patreon side, there's some more stuff we're gonna talk about. Some things we can't put on YouTube for obvious reasons. But man, this stuff is I'm excited.
I know you get so excited. It's your favorite thing. And for me, I'm more of I like to touch it, feel it. I was a former club DJ, so I like having knobs and buttons and all that stuff. So I wanted to tackle the aspect of what happens when you take AI and machine learning and literally made it to a physical system, put it in a machine, put it in a robot. What does that look like now? Not just a computer that's evolving and learning. It's an actual physical device or, an object. And there's good and bad implications with that as well, too. So we're getting anything else on AI before we go to our mid-show break?
The only thing that I want to say is I know that I didn't talk a lot about the negatives because I think the negatives are apparent. But I can assure you this is going to happen whether we want to or not. I say embrace it. And I say, just like anything else, our voices matter in all of these conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that the only thing that we can do at this point is advocate for, whether it be through voting or your voice on social media, for the proper and the right use for all of us. That's all I can say.
Yeah, we need rules. We need ethics to back this up here. And like anything, right? All the easy stuff is done. All these breaking technologies have bigger implications and require a certain level of maturity from humanity. Because again, if we just say, no, we're not going to touch this, it's just going to go somewhere else or just become militarized and then we won't have access to it. So
there's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in the second half of the show because I've got some things to ponder in relation to military, AI, autonomous weapons, that sort of thing. So with that, we'll take a quick break here. Everybody go refill your coffee. We'll see you back here in a few on Quantum Ladder Podcast. And we are back with the second half of Quantum Ladder Podcast. Great job, Marquise, on that AI. It's a difficult thing to put into common language so people that aren't familiar with it can kind of grasp it. But I think you did a fantastic job with that. And again, we encourage everybody do your own research on this stuff. We just want to bring you the information. Obviously, we have opinions on it, but everybody's opinion counts. So do your own research, play with it, and at least you have an understanding of it as these technologies progress. So, as we mentioned before the break, we want to see now what it looks like when you take AI and machine learning out of the world of computers necessarily and into the world of actual robotics, moving things. So I thought to get us started, I put together a little narrative video here. You got me all inspired on your voice acting, so I thought I'd put
It's
together
awesome.
a small clip, and that'll kind of get us started. So we'll check this out. Step into a realm where the ordinary turns extraordinary, the world of robotics. In this journey, we delve into the marvels that are reshaping our world. At the heart of this journey are the mechanical minds that mirror human intelligence. From the intricate precision of robotic limbs to the striking realism of androids, robotics is a testament to human creativity. Imagine machines that seamlessly transform to conquer diverse challenges. Robotics introduces us to transformers in the real world, adapting to whatever lies ahead. Beyond our blue planet and into the depths of the ocean, robots lead the way. They journey where humans cannot, expanding our horizons in space and the mysteries of the deep. In the realm of healthcare, robotic surgeons wield precision that's second to none. They redefine surgery, ensuring safety and advancing our medical frontiers. In factories and offices, robots collaborate seamlessly with humans, ushering in a new era for the workforce. They're not replacing jobs, but redefining them. Now here is where the magic unfolds: artificial intelligence and machine learning. These are the engines propelling robots to learn, adapt, and make independent choices. As we unlock the potential of technology, we encounter ethical dilemmas. Robotics challenges us to consider the moral landscape it represents. In the world of defense, robotics has ushered in a new era of warfare. Military robots and drones exhibit incredible precision and efficiency, reducing human risk on the battlefield. However, this progress comes with a challenging double-edged sword: the use of autonomous weapons. Powered by advanced artificial intelligence, this raises concerns about accountability and the potential for unintended consequences. Military leaders around the world recognize the strategic advantage that robotics offer. These machines can perform tasks with unparalleled speed and precision, often outmatching their human counterparts. From unmanned aerial vehicles, conducting reconnaissance, to ground-based robots, diffusing explosives, robotics is reshaping modern warfare. These machines extend the capabilities of our existing armed forces. Yet with great power comes great responsibility. The use of autonomous weapons raises critical ethical questions. Can we really trust machines to make life and death decisions on the battlefield? What safeguards must be in place to protect civilians? The international community is engaged in a heated debate over the regulation of autonomous weapons. Diplomats and policymakers grapple with defining clear boundaries for their use, striving to strike a balance between innovation and humanity. As we navigate the complexities of robotics in the military, it becomes clear that the path forward must involve collaboration between scientists, soldiers, and civilians. Together, we must harness the potential of this technology while upholding our moral values. Ladies and gentlemen, the world of robotics is not just about progress and innovation. It's also about the profound ethical choices we make as stewards of this transformative technology. So there we go. Let's get into robotics. So
All right,
a
I
lot of
gotta
people,
say that was I really appreciate that I inspired you to do stuff like that because I think you do a freaking excellent job, especially like syncing the video, each transition with the voice. It's really hard to do, guys. I just want to let you know. It's
I
really hard to do.
appreciate that. Thank you.
So
Yeah, it's something you definitely have to learn and play with. It's not something, but it's not impossible like anything,
no,
right? You put your mind to it, you study, you research, you find some apps that are easier than others, and
right.
you play with it. But that is what takes the amount of time, is
Yeah.
finding the right imagery to match the
Yeah.
dialogue, getting the dialogue good. I'm not a voice actor, but I think they turn out
I think it's
fairly
good, man.
decent.
It sounds very like if I were to watching a commercial about anything, that's the voice that I would be. I could hear that. I obviously do more dramatized which is why you think it sounds better. It's just a different kind of voice acting.
Yeah,
That's
different
all.
style. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're good. They kind of
Yep.
summarize what we're going to get into and provide some visuals, and they get the conversation kicked off right. So there was mention of job loss, and a lot of people are
Mhm.
worried that robotics will take over human jobs. And there was an accountancy firm called PwC that estimates between 2017 and 2037, AI and robotics will displace 7 million jobs. However, in the realms of computer science and robotics, they will create 7.2 million jobs. So we are net 200,000 plus for the economy. So it's essentially not taking away people's jobs. It's just redefining people's roles. And a lot of those jobs are heavy lifting roles, manual labor, back-breaking stuff, monotonous stuff, putting a screw in the same hole every day. I'm sure they're jobs people would rather not be doing. So it's not all doom and gloom. But the most important area, I think, to start off with is the area of medical. So, we've all seen imagery like this of, one day in the future, robots will be doing surgery. And if you watched our episode last week on Neuralink, you actually provided some video of a robotic operation inserting
Yep.
threads into a brain. So we're already there. And images like this that are CGI, this is no longer fake. This is the real machine. It's called a Da Vinci. Now, this is
Mhm.
also a controversial machine because a few reasons. One, there have been some problems. People have had operations not go very well, not at the fault of the machine. This is an extension of an actual surgeon. A surgeon is moving probes, moving arms, doing stuff, and the machine is reacting. So it is not thinking on its own, but bad input in is going to result in a bad input out. And there were some class action lawsuits against that. In fact, the training that the doctors were given was 2 days of dissecting pigs. And then it was only at their discretion. The company said, if you feel ready and prepared to be able to do these type of robotic surgeries, you've now been given the training, you can go ahead and do it. But there are some proficient doctors that say they weren't even comfortable after like 100 or 150
Mm.
of these operations. It really took hundreds to dial that in, and that we should be maybe paying a little more attention to that and not just making this so accessible. It's mainly used for thoracic surgery, things to do with your lungs, hysterectomy, that type of thing. For whatever reason, they feel that the robotic is the faster, easier way. There have been horror stories of women who have had parts of their intestine fall out because it wasn't sutured up properly inside, or small operations that inevitably led to hysterectomy. Now these people can't have kids anymore. So it was definitely not flawed. Again, with any new technology, there's going to be that learning curve. And unfortunately, some people, that's going to happen, right? But so that's still an ongoing kind of controversial thing. But four main types of medical robots, just to sort of summarize. We have the hospital-based robots, which can ease in like assisting operations, recovery, that type of thing, physiotherapy. We then have pharmaceutical robots, something like this. This is Athon. It's basically a dispensary, so it never makes a mistake on prescription meds, never gives the wrong pills, the wrong quantity. You know what I mean? It's a way to kind of streamline and speed up. Also prevents theft. Let's be honest, there's a lot of stories in hospitals of certain people with certain addictions that have access to pills they shouldn't have access to, right? So this is it's a security measure as well as another error proof sort of layer in the whole chain. And other technologies that were initially developed for soldiers have therapeutic benefits. This is basically for people who would be paralyzed. Those robots, in conjunction with some hand canes, you could walk even having no sensation in your lower limbs. The robot itself becomes the muscles that you need to move. So this could help people both with physiotherapy to recover and be able to walk. And it could also help people that will never walk gain some mobility. So that's the surgical aids, the hospital, the pharmaceutical rep. And then we also have ones in senior care, or people that are in palliative care, things like that. A robot like this, you and I might look at it as kind of goofy, but to an 85-year-old man who's never seen a robot in his life, this thing knows his name and can talk back. It is amazing. And it is companionship. As sad as that is, it is better than having nobody. It is something that they can talk to, even though they know it's not a real person. There is a therapeutic effect that comes along with that. And so those are the main areas in medicine that are going through that. Another area to consider is agriculture. So take an example here. This is from Byte Ant website. There's a thing called computer vision. So essentially, like, here's some, robotic harvesting. These are plants that can go and do, everything autonomously on their own. But what this robot vision is it basically is machine learning. It can identify issues with the fruit or produce being grown, too much light, not enough light, too much water, insects, and it can dial in how much pesticide or herbicide needs to be used. So we're not just spraying for the sake of spraying. It can really give you sort of a pulse on the health of the vegetables that that you're growing, and tell you how to better run a more efficient, more eco-friendly farm. And like this little guy here, it can tell when the fruit is ripe. So it's picking tomatoes that it knows to be ripe based on the data we have given it to say that only the ones of this red a hue you go ahead and pick, right?
Mm.
So, a lot of farming and a lot of the labor is the most expensive part, paying people, machinery, fuel. I mean, if you have electric little bots like this that are going around doing the planting, doing the harvesting, essentially doing all the heavy lifting, and even out in the field, this is the future of farming, driverless tractors. This thing, you will upload your instructions, it'll go out, hook up whatever rig on the back needs to be there, whether it's a sprayer or a harvester or a drill, whatever they call it for planting seeds. It can basically do all of that for you without carbon output and without having a human as well. And
Mm.
for a mundane task like, making hay, let's say, or planting seeds, the people that do that work, I have friends that work in farming. They say it sucks. It's hours and hours of just sitting in a
I hear that.
machine. They wish there was an automated way to do it because, and they make really good money. So to the farmer and the owner of the company, that's very high price, high paid
Yeah.
and high priced talent that you're wasting in a tractor for 8 hours when he could be doing something a little bit different.
That's that's that's
And
the
I've
thing.
even seen,
Yeah.
like, I don't have an image of it, but robotic milking. There are farms that are totally
Mhm.
autonomous where the cows are trained that when they feel the need to get milk, they go in the carousel. A robot hooks up the udder attachments. It'll milk the right amount. It also can tell the health of that cow. It knows which cow is in the stall at that time because they're chipped. So you can monitor who's producing the most milk. Therefore, when you want to rebreed and pass these genetics forward, they're using the cows that have the best output, the higher fat quantity, and overall they can sense when animals may have an issue rather than waiting till the animal's physically sick and a farmer noticing 1 out of 800 kind of thing, right? So there's a lot of innovation in the world of agriculture, of course, in industry, the world of robotic manufacturing. Right from warehousing, these things can go up and down, back and forth. I'm sure Amazon has some level of this already, but in the future, you won't need humans to go pick orders. You'll be able to have these machines. They know where everything's warehoused. They know what you've ordered. They can communicate with each other. So one can be grabbing a portion of your Amazon order from one area of the warehouse and the other here, and it will all come together. It'll never be a mistake. It knows the
Yeah.
weight,
I
and
worked I
go
worked at
ahead.
a place where they had those autonomous robots, by the way. This is really cool because I was there for a while. And in the entire so as long as they had those robots, they never hurt anybody, not
Yeah.
once. They reduced the injuries, workplace injuries by whatever I can't remember what the factor was, but all of the people that were doing those, they made mistakes. They
Yeah.
eliminated that mistake factor or whatever entirely. And if you try to jump in front of them, they'll stop because people will try to like see if they can get a lawsuit. They'll stop like instantly. So
Wow. Yeah, I know in the auto sector, a lot of manufacturers are using, assembly lines like this, multiple robots doing various jobs, everything from welding to assembly to you name it. It can be done. Some are fully autonomous, some work in conjunction with humans. And on our last episode and on our first, actually, in terms of nanotechnology, we talked about how small some of these things are. Humans aren't going to be able to create these things. So you need machinery that can work at tiny scales with precision and never make a mistake. And essentially, robots would fill that void, right? So moving on, if you think about robots in the home, first thing that comes to my mind and most people's is this bad boy here, the iRobot Roomba, a $1,200 robotic vacuum that, from what I understand, can get tripped on some carpet and not necessarily do a proper job. But the new ones have come a long way. They will go out, they memorize your floor plan, they know what days and what times you're not home, they know the frequency. It will go literally, mop. Some of them are wet and dry vac, clean your whole place. They can dump their the waste in that canister above. It's all HEPA, all that stuff. I'm sure cats go nuts when they see that thing ripping around, but I mean,
they
you
can
can,
sit on them. Cats are sitting on them and riding
Or
around.
sitting, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I saw a picture of somebody had a corgi with a hat and it was doing donuts on the
Yeah,
Roomba.
yeah, yeah. It will
So
like put its paw in front of it to make it go somewhere
yeah.
else because it's
So that's what most people think of when they think home
yeah.
robots. I mean, we have home automation, things like Alexa, you mentioned earlier, personal assistants, but in terms of moving devices, there's not as
Oh,
many.
I don't know if you I hope I don't ruin this here, but there are drones that you can have in your home. There are like Alexa drones that have a camera on them and can like monitor each environment, each room or whatever to make
Can
sure
they
nobody.
bring you items? Can you say,
I
"Go
don't
get my
know. I don't
slippers"?
I don't think so.
Because
All
I
I know
have
is that
one of those here. That's this bad
no
boy.
way.
This is
No way.
called Alias. So essentially, it's an adaptation of the Jetsons, but this thing here, it has a modular arm, so it can vacuum, mop, it can grip
Wow.
objects, return them to their rightful places, and basically that is your in-home personal assistant. We all remember the Sony Aibo, the original dog that barked and sat and did all that stuff. It's come a long way now. This is the newest iteration of the Aibo, and again, it kind of provides that same therapeutic factor that something like this does, right? It's just another voice for somebody who may be lonely and not have anyone to interact with, right? Maybe you live in a building or a nursing home that you can't have pets, or maybe you just don't want to pick up dog poop, right? You want something to play with.
Right.
This is kind of like the Tamagotchi key tags that we used to have with a little pet. You had to feed it every so often and all that kind of thing. This is essentially a dog that interacts and learns from you as well. In terms of more practical things, I think this is awesome. This is the WinBot. So this is an automatic window washing device. Now, I'm not sure you use this in a house setting, but if you look at the picture in the back, a giant skyscraper with glass, I'm not a heights guy. I don't understand how anybody could sit in those little swinging baskets and clean
Yeah.
windows on a 100-story skyscraper. You could honestly give me as much money as you want. I wouldn't do it. I would have a heart attack just trying to do it. I don't physically think I could, but with WinBot X, you essentially you take that work and danger. I mean, if this thing comes unglued, it's one thing. It's not a human life. And a lot of the stuff we're going to cover with robotics is sort of alleviating risk, and especially in military applications, which we'll get to as well. This has got to be the stay-at-home dad's personal favorite one. This is Laundroid. So it's not washing your clothes. We have machines that do that. A washer and dryer is essentially a robot. You put your clean laundry in this bad boy, and it will fold it, sort it, stack it, and put it away nicely in a closet
How
for
much is
you.
that? How much is it?
I have
Just
no
ask
idea
for
how
a
much
friend.
Laundroid is. If anybody
Gotta
knows,
Google
let us know in the comments. But that's an automated fold. So I guess if you got money and nothing better to spend it
Right.
on, or if laundry folding is really a huge problem that you need a solution for, Laundroid might be for you, right? So
Yeah.
so
I'll get it.
we mentioned the net sort of addition of 200,000 jobs in the next 20 years or so, and there are a lot of companies that are putting out material right now. This is from ZDNet. They did an article that industrial robots are good for the economy, again reducing waste, minimizing injury, increasing efficiency, maybe brings the cost of goods down. We know the price of everything is through the roof now. Maybe automation and robotics, which we already have in a lot of settings, but further advancements in that would definitely have some benefit. We are pushing into new applications and industries, and in fact, even Nvidia, the graphics card company,
My
has
favorite.
they're creating software. This is that, like you said, those LLMs. Well, this is kind of software to run autonomous machines. So again, the applications could be huge. It could be military. It could be computer-based, cell phone companies, whatever. But there are companies now devoting their resources to writing code and programs that these things can run on. It'll be like an
Yeah.
iOS
Really
or an
cool.
Android-based operating
And
system. This is
I gotta say,
basically
I do wanna say something about the edge computing. If you don't know what that is, think like cloud computing is where you kind of offset all of your or outsource the computing power of an application into the cloud, which is essentially just like an internet service of something. But edge computing is where you offset the power, the processing power of a thing. So you could have something that's the size of, I don't know, a nickel that is more powerful than your computer because it's not using what's on the device.
right.
It's using what's called edge computing, which is somewhere else is processing all the power you need it to do, and giving you the functionality of that power on that little device.
Right. So
That's
your
what edge
battery
computing is.
life could last 2 weeks because the
Forever.
phone
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I
100%.
remember it was maybe a while ago, maybe 8, 9 years ago, but I got a new phone. It was a Samsung phone, and there was an update, just software, but that alone extended the battery life. So because
Yeah,
it was being more efficient in how it was calculating things or computing, didn't need to use as many of the onboard
right.
resources to get to the same result. So in essence, just by giving it a software update, it doubled the battery life almost, right? So
It's phenomenal. Yeah.
that is what we're looking at in the future. Another area outside of industry is space. We all know that on Mars or anywhere that we're going, we have to have autonomous vehicles that can get there on their own. I mean, even when they communicate back with us, there's a delay. So we can't on the fly, land this thing. It has to have its own instructions set up so that when it gets there, it knows how to land safely, deploy its rover, if there's a drone associated with it, and that's sort of something like this, right? These things have to make entry, slow themselves down. Don't bust your little car when you get there, because otherwise the mission has failed. And and also these things have really sensitive instrumentation. Like they cost, I don't even know how much, millions, if not billions. You don't want to be dropping this thing from any height. I'm sure
Probably
they've
not.
built in some fail safes for that, but so, we see that a lot. And future projects, this is an example of a 2020 deep drill assembly. So if mining or anything like that, both for sampling, if we're trying to look for, fossil records of, maybe life, or if we're trying to see mineral content or mining materials that we can use to build things, if we are going to colonize other planets, you need to be able to have various adaptations of that. And here's one here. This is the Phobos. This is a sample return. So many of us have heard that going to Mars is a one-way trip. Well, there may be a way, and it may be necessary to return with some items, both raw elements or people or whatever. So this is a way, kind of like a reusable rocket, like SpaceX. This is a
Yeah.
reusable Mars lander that you could pack your stuff back in, take off, and bring it back home again. So it may not
Mm.
necessarily have to be that one-way trip that a lot of people think. And this is my last one as far as Mars goes, or space exploration. So that little helicopter top left, that was deployed out of the last Mars rover. It brought that with it, so we can fly around and do aerial. And they're even developing sort of a V-wing, a delta wing shape, the Mars airplane. Due to the extremely thin air, it's a challenge, but there may be a way that there could be some type of a glider or something like that to assist with those type of missions. So now, in terms of military, this is the big one and the one we need to watch the most. We all know that there are some robotic operated vehicles. We've all seen images like this, drones and things like that. But for the most part, these drones are still being controlled by somebody, not in a simulation cockpit, but somebody's pulling the trigger. They're looking through the eyes of the drone. They're flying in the right area. A human is still getting involved. And a lot of the technologies we're currently using in the military are meant to assist humans. Here's an example of a bomb diffuser. No more do you need a human to go and take that risk. You could have a human controlling the robot. And if it blows up, oh, well, just get another
Oh,
robot.
yeah, yeah.
It doesn't affect.
I've seen it in CSI, you know?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Bomb diffusers, like I said, this is would be clearing debris, or I mean, this could be blown up vehicles. It could be collapse. Let's say there was a massive earthquake. It would be a fast, autonomous way to move stuff without having to bring in heavy machinery. It's kind of all purpose. It has an arm on it. It has a big blade in the front. It's got tanks. It's got weapons. I mean, this thing is sort of the do all of the battlefield. Even things, to take the risk away from humans, like loading missiles, or anything that you don't want to be around
Yeah.
in case something goes wrong. And again, practical purposes, we have some of these guys here. It can be used to enter a building. So instead of sending in your valued troops and having them get into, firefight in close proximity, you send in one of these things and it can scan the entire building, see where the enemies are, see if they're armed, communicate back in real time. And if that thing steps on a landmine, oh, well.
And they have those they really do use those. Like
They
those are
do use those.
real.
Yeah, like these ones
Yeah.
here are actually in production. These are like mules. These are just meant to carry weight. So payload, that type of thing, right? I'm sure you can arm them as well. All of these you could stick weapons on. There's no doubt. But this is meant because of the four-leg geometry and the algorithm that's in it. It's very much like how a horse or a four-legged animal would traverse. And you can put whatever you need to in that, really, and send it instead of a convoy line of trucks that are susceptible to IEDs or explosives. You run a line of those things. If something happens, there's no human life involved, right?
Right.
So they're also like battlefield helpers. It's not just meant to be either or. It doesn't need to be only humans or only robots. You could have additional things like this that basically, they spread out the battlefield. They increase your strike force. So you could have these things systematically placed or front line, right? You don't have to have the humans in the most dangerous areas. You could have things like that. Here's another example of an autonomous gunner. This thing looks pretty crazy. I don't know what that big cannon looking thing in the front, if it's a rocket
I
launcher or
don't
what
know.
that is,
For a
but
sensor? I don't know.
it looks like something out of Grand Theft Auto, the video game, that you could get 5 stars pretty quick if you needed it. Like that thing could inflict some damage. And that's the problem too. If you start putting AI software where these things now become autonomous and think on their own, you now have robots making life and death decisions on the battlefield. So as of now, there are human inputs, and we'll talk a little bit more on that in a bit. I just want to show you some more of these autonomous vehicles. This thing's pretty cool. Little tank, whole bunch of rockets on the front, cameras. There's various iterations of it. Here's a track gunner. I mean, that thing could just run up and down the line, back and forth, just spraying bullets. You could have a wagon full of bullets on that bad boy, and that's effectively your defense. Even rescuing wounded people. The U.S. Army is actively working on things like that. I think this is a prototype, but you get the idea. And with the tracks on the feet, it can traverse any land, pick up somebody so that you don't have to send another human life out into an area where live rounds were just fired. Somebody just got shot. There's a good chance the guy going to get him may get shot too, right? And that's always a concern. And then even the Navy within the NATO countries, they have semi-autonomous firing. So if certain things penetrate certain airspaces, these things will pick it up and do what they're supposed to do. I believe Israel has what's called the Iron Dome. It's the same thing. If any rockets are fired, it'll automatically launch a rocket and take it out before it hits the people. And then you have another technology of these drones and this type of thing, what they call swarms. So a swarm being kind of like a bee swarms, just many. Effectively, you could have a drone swarm that could inflict either, firearms or drop payloads, or they could just be used to confuse or to overwhelm, intimidate. There's many applications, but essentially the worst case scenario is a world of this where we don't have a control, and this thing's going to decide if it's pulling the pin or not. So
not so
let's
good.
get into the world of DARPA. The defense research projects where people submit, robotics, and Boston Dynamics has done all this cool stuff. And when we think of DARPA, we probably think of videos like this. I mean, those things fall over on their own without even being touched, right? That was sort of the early stages of that. And this is a film that was actually made in a studio, so it's not real, but it was made to highlight the fact of where we are going with these robots in the field. They're no longer falling over themselves and at the slightest nudge getting knocked over. So here's an example of what this looks like in the future. The last one did it. The last one took them out.
This time. But they're better than that, too. They're better than that.
That isn't real, but this was from 2014, almost 10 years ago. This was the winner of the DARPA contest 2014. Check this out.
Top 2013. Successfully completed all 8 tasks at the 2014 DARPA Robotics Challenge. Tasks included driving a vehicle, getting in and out of vehicle, and operating power tools.
So I mean, that thing's doing backflips, and again,
Parkour.
yeah,
Can do parkour.
parkour. You
Yeah.
equip that thing with some guns, and the last video is real. And in fact, this thing maneuvers better than the video they made to say, "Oh, look how cool robots are." No, the real ones, and that's 10 years old. Imagine what they have now. And in doing the research for this, it was hard for me to actually find real DARPA stuff because it's classified. They don't want that stuff getting out. That's what the military is working on,
Yeah.
and it's the other countries around the world are doing the same thing. So you don't want to give away your hand. And in terms of even things like spying or secret service agencies, here's a CIA spider. This thing has an algorithm in it to act and move exactly like a real spider. And just take, I mean, that thing can be put in a tree. It can be, you would never know that it wasn't real unless you saw it
Yeah.
up front. That is all mechanical. So in terms of
That's wild.
spying on people, listening to people, things like that, it's your mind can sort of go crazy. And again, as I mentioned, this is happening all around the world. Here was a competition in China. I won't play the whole thing, but they give these competitors, a lot of them are universities and high-level robotic students, but they give them sort of an obstacle course, and they see whose robot can get through all the obstacles and challenges. So here's an example of what they're doing over in China.
Whoa.
That thing is crazy. It's like a
Oh, yeah.
grasshopper.
That's wild.
They're just showing off, but I mean,
Yeah.
they're trying to show what is possible, right?
Wow.
I'll move ahead a little bit here. Yeah, it's doing hurdles. Stairs, no problem. And I mean, that seems a little janky compared to some of the stuff we actually have
Yeah,
now.
we could.
They've
It's
come a
wild.
long way.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is people can even sort of do this stuff at home. There's this sort of the maker revolution of people that like to play with robotics and feel like that they can personally contribute. And here's an example of a guy who made a bionic hand.
A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts. So, he loses touch with reality and lives in a world of illusions. By thoughts, I mean specifically chatter in the skull, perpetual and compulsive repetition of words, of reckoning and calculating. I'm not saying that thinking is bad. Like everything else, it's useful in moderation. A good servant, but a bad master. And all so-called civilized peoples have increasingly become crazy and self-destructive because through excessive thinking.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, people are going, they're going above and beyond. They really get into this thing. And
Yeah.
it's cool that the application there is a hand. So you could, in theory, hook those wires up to active nerves in somebody's amputated stump, and they could, with just thinking,
Well,
still fire the same neuron and get the same robotic hand to move. So,
I
um,
gotta say, I want to tell you, the one of the demonstrations I saw from Meta years ago, Apple showed this as well. They had a watch. Zuckerberg had a watch on, and he was controlling. That's why I said about moving your fingers like this slightly. It was detecting movement at a micro, like a very tiny little scale on your wrist, using machine learning and AI to detect what you're doing, what gestures you're using to navigate your phone. So you don't have to. You no longer eventually, like, this is pretty cool. Eventually, they might be able to just put a watch on or a little wristband and
yeah.
kind of detect what muscle movements you're using, and then just do whatever.
That's right. Yeah. And again, too, there's direct correlations, as you saw the guy moving his hand and his
Yeah.
neural electrical
Yeah.
current was making the machine work. Well, they
Yeah.
can also do that for the face. There are many, many muscles that create expressions on a face. And some people are doing work on making robots. Even when you see these sort of Android robots, they look kind of real, but not really. You can tell it's a robot. but in the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to look more and more like this. So yeah, as futuristic as it gets, right? There may come a day where you may not be able to tell the difference. And if you look at military applications, what does 100,000 of
Yeah.
those things look like that have no fear? They don't bleed, they don't die. Even if they get an arm blown off, they can still shoot with the
Yeah.
other arm. I mean, there needs to
Well,
be
they also don't
some.
eat. They don't eat. They don't drink. They don't sleep.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Right?
right. Think about all the supplies and rations that have to go along with
Yeah.
bringing your army as you're invading. All of that is eliminated, as well as the risk. The problem is it kind of defies the laws of the Geneva Convention, which is how to fight fairly in war, what you can do, what you can't do. You can't use bioweapons and things like that. What about robotics? And most of these things we're talking about are like drones, without the need of a pilot, or unmanned autonomous vehicles, UAVs. But what about when it comes to something making the kill decision, where it's
Mm.
not a guy who's an actual pilot just using the drone as his eyes? It's a drone that's going to decide what is friendly and what is not, and it's going to execute based on what it's been programmed. So, I mean, we've never assigned that type of responsibility to a software. And many people think we shouldn't ever, that it should not be something like that. It should be stricken off the battlefield. But again, we can't predict what other countries are going to do. And, we need to pay attention to this. So there needs to be a new legal framework, kind of rewriting this whole thing. Human rights and accountability is important, even when it comes to like the spying, your privacy, your autonomy. These are all things, and even bias. A lot of the AI that's going into this stuff, they'll take facial recognition, for example. They did a study where they submitted, I think it was 20 images of politicians. And this was, I think, Amazon's facial recognition software that they're using, which they want to sell law enforcement and things like that. So they gave them like 20 Congress people, and that software identified 10 of them as being criminals, which they're not. Unfortunately, the majority of them were people of color. So
Wow.
they found out that, wait a minute, there's actually a coded bias in some of these AI algorithms, particularly with face recognition.
Yep.
And that needs to be taken into account for, because it's built based on how we are now. So the AI isn't the way we want it to be in the future yet, because it was designed and it's built in with those same biases that we currently have. And that needs to be looked at. I know there are some companies that use AI technologies to decide who gets hired or not. They decide your credit worthiness, whether you're getting approved for this mortgage or not. In China, they have a social credit score where, you're tracked everywhere, your image and all that. And if you speak out against the party, you maybe don't have access to certain things, social programs, transit even.
Well,
I mean,
gotta
a
tell you,
communist
they already
country
have.
reserves the right to do that, spy on you. And if this technology is flawed, there could be people getting incarcerated that didn't commit the crime.
We have that now in America. It's
Yeah.
the credit system.
Yeah.
And even though you don't call it a social system, a social credit system, the credit system essentially is, hey, this person isn't considered valuable enough to loan money to, or to even buy a home or to get a car or anything like that. There's already somewhat of a social, but it's more of a monetary credit system. But still, there is a discriminatory implementation in American society now with that credit system towards lower class people.
Yeah. And I think one of the co-founders of Apple actually highlighted it. He said, hey, how come it was a certain product credit wise? And he goes, how come I was offered this 10 times the credit limit than my wife when we have the same credit score and all the same trade lines? So why is a male getting 10 times the approved credit limit
Mm.
and his wife was not? And there were errors built into the AI, like it is not perfect. It is making incorrect decisions. The
Right.
issue is if humans have stepped away from that, how do you find out when something's wrong? If there are injustices happening, how do you know? And
That's
even
where
in
I
terms of
relate, Jeff.
like
Yeah, or I relate,
Meta
Jeff.
and using they display different things to you based on your own unique reality. So we're being scored, we're being studied, all of our data, like you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, they already have, but that experience is unique to each person. I might be seeing things on my Facebook that is intentionally put out there for me,
Yeah.
and I might think that everybody's getting the same experience. So now certain news articles seem like everybody knows about it. Certain political agendas, it might sway a person one way or the other based on what inputs the algorithms are saying to display to you. So there's really no rules with any of this right now. And that's the problem. Other countries are actually a little more strict than the US and Canada right now. It is wide open here. You can use that for whatever purpose you want. I suppose as long as people aren't being directly affected monetarily. But again, how would you know? How would you know if you didn't get approved for that Capital One card because it's your credit or because there was a mistake with the software? And who would you
Mm.
even talk to because a human didn't make the decision? So it starts to breed socioeconomic problems, the haves and the have-nots, and that moves forward and again. So the biggest thing I think is that sort of legal, the ramifications of assigning too much responsibility to robots essentially or AI. My personal opinion is there should always be human oversight. A machine should never be able to make the decision of pulling the trigger. However, humans make incredible amounts of errors, and in war, there is so much collateral damage and innocent civilians murdered because of that. So if
Right.
there would be a way to reduce that or save a life on the battlefield because you didn't have to send a bunch of troopers into a building that you knew was a suicide mission, they were all going to get killed because it's full of guys waiting for them. If you could avoid that, that's valuable and should be
Mm.
used. But it could also go to the extreme level, and you could use this to wipe people out, have unfair battlefield, spy on your population unfairly. Again, you mentioned Edward Snowden. That's kind of already happening. They already have the right to do that. And so these are things we need to keep an eye on. Again, we're not robotics engineers, nor is anybody probably listening, but you guys need to have a healthy understanding that this is happening in the medical world, in the home care world, in industry and technology and things like that. You could say that, oh, they're going to take away all our jobs. Studies are being done saying it's actually going to create more jobs, just different jobs. So with any new technology usually comes a lot of hesitation, and a lot of people say, well, I don't like this, I'm worried about this. But just like with AI, it's happening, it's coming, it's here. A lot of these technologies that we've showed you, they're already a decade old. We're just getting what they're telling us. But
Mm.
the companies that are using this stuff in the background, military, governments, it's far more advanced than we think. And some finding closing benefits. I just wanted to bring up a couple future benefits of robotics. One would be disaster recovery. Taking something like we saw earlier, that a vehicle like this to helping deal with disaster situations. This is relatively cheaper than sending in your military to go and help Haiti or something like that if they had a massive earthquake or something. These could already be in various countries around the world. Natural disaster hotspots, tornado alley, that kind of thing. We could already utilize that. It doesn't need to be fed or eat or anything else. So disaster recovery, addressing environmental concerns could be another area that robotics could play in. Maybe collecting, pulling materials out of the ocean, stuff like that. And again, reducing strenuous labor in the workplace. So it'll be interesting to see what comes in the future out of all this. But definitely the world of AI is here. The world of machine learning is here.
Mm.
So not only are computers sort of on that quest to become sentient, so are the machines and robotics that we pair them with. So that's what I got on robotics. What do we running just shy of 2 hours here? Not bad. That's
Yeah.
that's good. It's tough. Again, how do you break this down in a digestible junket for people to
That was
take
the
in?
hardest part. Yeah. Researching it was the fun part.
Yeah,
How do you like condensing it? That was like, what do I tell? What do I use? There's so much stuff.
sure.
That was hard. That
Inevitably,
was
you're
hard.
leaving some stuff
Yeah.
out anytime we do that, but we just wanted to give people sort of the biggest nuts and bolts that go along with that. And yeah, so we hope everybody is enjoying our series here. Leave us some comments. Tell us what you think. It's important to us. If you have been enjoying it, give us a thumbs up. If you're listening on Spotify, go ahead and give us a rating there. It's just underneath the logo beside the word science. If you could, if you like us, I think it's just stars. There's no comments or anything, but If you think we're 5-star, give us 5-star. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, and check us out Sunday nights on the UnX Network. You can go to unxnetwork.com and listen to us on digital broadcast, or the UnX Network has a YouTube channel that plays our videos. And we hop in the chat rooms on Sunday nights. So if you want to say hi, ask some questions, or just chat as the episode is playing, that's what we're there for. So I'll turn it back to you, Marquise. Final word, brother. What do you want people to know about what we chatted about today?
There's just a few things here. The first thing that I want to say is artificial intelligence is going to make things better. Without it, we're not on a very good trajectory. So strap in, because one way or another, it's gonna happen. So get ready. And also, the one thing that I think we need to really focus on is that one acronym, RLHF. That's reinforcement learning with human feedback. That's how we prevent the AI, the machine learning, whatever, from doing harm to us or the environment. But it's happening, y'all. Just get ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just need to pay attention and treat it with the respect that it's due. And like anything, it can be used for positive or nefarious purposes. But as a community, we all need to come together, embrace these technologies, and use them to actually better humanity. It's the kind of thing that we can take away from industry, because everybody can get involved. Nobody's going to be able to patent robotics. You might make a robot that you patent, but this is wide open. We can all get involved. It feels like a more inclusive thing. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing moving forward. So with that, we will thank everybody for joining us today. It's always a blast doing these shows. We love having you guys. We look forward to seeing you in the future in our next episode. Give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe, and follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. We're all over the place. Just Google Quantum Ladder Podcast, and we'll see you next time. Take care.